The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Hello, I'm Ray Lemura. Welcome to this edition of Cable Reports. Our guest today is Secretary of Education Ann Holton. Welcome, Madam Secretary.
Welcome. Thank you, Ray. Great to be with you.
We're glad you could be here. You have a lot of exciting things going on with SOL, innovations and reforms, so I'd like to hear you chat a little bit about that and some of the exciting things going on there.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ray. It is an exciting time to be involved in education in Virginia. We've got really wonderful teachers and schools all across the Commonwealth and students working hard to learn and get ready for the new Virginia economy. And I've been very blessed to be involved with this SOL Innovation Committee. The General Assembly last year, at the governor's behest, created this group to really look at what are we doing across the board in our accountability and our testing and our standards of learning, and what can we do to take it to the next level in terms of inspiring great teaching and learning. And it's been a fun group to work with.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the committee. How often is it meeting? What are some of their things they're driving at right now that you're seeing?
So the group was, as I say, created by last year's General Assembly, started meeting in July and met very intensively, both in full committee and subcommittees, between July and November, and came up with a very strong set of interim recommendations. The group, I should say, by the way, is really terrific folks, educators, parents, business community, higher ed folks, teachers, principals, testing specialists, folks from all across the Commonwealth, and it's been a really, really productive, hard-working group. School board members. They came up with an interim set of recommendations in November that they hoped the Board of Education and the legislature could use right away, and they are. And then meanwhile, we've had subcommittees meeting over the last couple of months, and will be next convening as a full committee in late March. And it's a body that's meant to be an ongoing, it was created for a 2-year time span, at least initially, to continue figuring out really how do we do, we're saying that we're at the point where Virginia has really led the way nationally in terms of high standards, rigorous expectations, and accountability and testing systems that go with that. We started this back in the 90s. And it's served us well here in Virginia, and others across the country are doing it under different names and really behind us in the sense of chronologically. Right. And yet one of the advantages of being the front of the curve, but the burden as well, is that we are finding out some of the unintended consequences, and we've just gone a little too far, frankly, in the high-stakes accountability and testing. Teachers are spending too much time teaching to the test. Teachers and students and communities are feeling the pressure too much. We're doing too much. The system works pretty well to identify where our weak links are, but then it proceeds to kick them down farther rather than to help build them up. Right. And so we're working to adjust and figure out how to have a system that better supports teaching and learning. All right.
So any key recommendations that you've identified so far?
A couple of the key recommendations that came out of the General Assembly, came out of the first round of recommendations, and that the General Assembly has now acted on, I'm happy to say. One is that particularly near and dear to me, is directing the Board of Education to create additional categories of accreditation to recognize progress and growth. So we'll have schools. There's a school I visited out in Southwest Virginia in Bristol, and I visited another one in Henrico just recently. But the one I'm thinking of in Bristol is a school that's got very, very high percentage of free and reduced lunch kids, and poverty is at the heart of where our challenges are. It's not hard to see that connection for all kinds of reasons. But a school with very, very high percentage of poverty, very dedicated teachers working really hard to involve families, to help these kids in every possible way, and there are a lot of needs. That school got a new principal. That school has been struggling, needed a new principal, needed new leadership, brought in a new principal last year, I think it was, or a year before. They've been making steady progress since that new principal, but they had a long way to go, and they're not at the benchmarks. And with the population they're working with, that's a high bar. Right. And our benchmarks are no longer, they started out as sort of a minimum competency, but we've moved the goalposts so that they're really now college and career rigorous career readiness tests. So it's a high standard, and they're not there, and they may not be there this year. If they don't meet those standards this year, our current system declares them a failure, even though they're moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And that's not the right message. That's a message that sends teachers, parents, anybody who can, the message we tell them is, get the heck out of here. Right. Go to a school system where it's easier. But we want our best educators in our neediest schools, and so we need to recognize growth and progress. And,
right.
and that's one of the steps that's come out of the Innovation Committee that the General Assembly acted on already this year.
Right. Great. It's interesting that poverty in schools are really the first places where to help identify those issues and help solve some of the issues initially for, like you said, children on free and reduced school lunch programs.
Poverty is, it's the reason these schools struggle, but it's also the reason why we've got to help them. Education is the key ticket to help these young people and these communities overcome their challenges.
Right. And the achievement gap is something that you're focusing on too, and we can talk a little bit
yes.
about how that
and they really go together.
Right.
So Virginia is, as I say, Virginia's got a strong overall K-12 system. We rank one of the best in the nation. If you look at us compared to other states on everything from how do our kids do on the SATs, or how do they do on the ACTs, or percentage of kids who take AP courses and percentage who pass AP courses. Or there's this national comparative test, the NAEP, that's a sampling test. It's not our regular SOL test, but it's a sampling test that enables you to compare across states in 4th and 8th grade reading and math. On any of those cross-state measures, Virginia is doing well. But if you look at those same measures and compare our and I say, you can look at it a number of different ways, but I say looking at it based on poverty. If you look at our free lunch kids versus everybody else, there's a 30-point gap, almost any number you look at. It's a huge gap, and it's consistent with other states' experience, but it's long-standing and persistent. And yet it's something we can do something about. We've got to do something about it, and we're all working together to try to close it.
Right. And you and the governor are working hand in hand with this.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. It was really how he, when he first approached me about this job, I wasn't sure it made sense for me, but he said, I've spent my whole career fighting for families and kids at the margin. And when I said, does this job make sense for me? He said, that's what I want you to do in this job, is fight for kids and families at the margin, and that's what we're doing.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your background, because like you said, wasn't the right fit for you right away, but I knew the passion you have for it. But
a new opportunity.
Right. Tell us about your background.
Yeah. Well, I started out as a legal aid lawyer, and then I was a juvenile court judge working with kids and families in challenging circumstances. From that world, as you know, my husband was elected governor when I was still a judge, and I left the bench to use my First Lady hat to champion child welfare, kids in the foster care system, in and out of the foster care system. From there, I worked in the community colleges a little, and here. And I've been involved in education in all kinds of ways my whole life. As a 12-year-old, I helped integrate the Richmond City Schools when my dad was governor. And so I've been passionately engaged in education issues, literally in my DNA. Right. And I've been, all my kids came through the Richmond City Schools. I'm a product of public education all across Virginia. And I've been involved in various volunteer capacities. But in a professional way, this is a new game for me, and it's been a wonderful honor.
Right. That's exciting. Talk a little bit about the joy of learning in the classroom. What's going on there?
Yeah. So that's one of the other challenges. We've talked about how the SOL accountability system has been challenging for some of our most struggling schools, but also some of our top schools tell me that they are having they're doing creative and interesting things, but they're feeling constrained by the current rules. You know, one thing, a standardized test is never going to test effectively whether you're teaching oral communication skills, whether you're teaching teamwork, whether you're teaching kids how to do a deep dive into something they love and are really interested in. And we've got schools that are doing that kind of work and are dying to do more of it. And that some of what we're trying to do of easing off, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but easing off on some of the standardized pressure is to free up some of that energy. And I mean, I can go on all day about some of the fun things I've seen schools and teachers do, and I'll just tell you one of my favorites. There's a project up in the Charlottesville, Albemarle area, and it's actually a joint project of Charlottesville schools, Albemarle schools, the Curry School of Education at UVA, the Engineering School at UVA, and the Smithsonian. And they've got these kids researching 19th century patents in the Smithsonian's digital records, and then recreating their own version of these 19th century machines using their 3D printers and all the modern gizmos. I visited one school in Albemarle early on in my in this job that had just recreated a 19th century telegraph machine.
Oh my gosh.
And they had strung the wire from the middle school across the parking lot to the elementary school on the other side of the parking lot, and I got to help them test it on their first, and it was just hilarious because they've literally created these parts with 3D printers. They're communicating with the elementary schoolers, trying to tell them what to hook up, you know, hook up the red wire to the blue knob, and they're doing that by video conference cameras to make this 19th century telegraph work, and finally do get the ... dash out. You know, that's exciting stuff. And that wasn't some teacher, that was 2 kids in this class. You know, all the students in this, I think it was 8th grade, I know it was middle school, all the kids in this class had been invited to and expected to do some kind of one of these projects, and these 2 had seized on this telegraph thing. So, and the teachers, they're running into some kind of trouble hooking it up, and the teacher's not jumping in. She's stepping back and going, no, you all figure it out.
Right.
That kind of deep dive learning is very, very exciting and is happening in lots of places all across the Commonwealth. But right now, they all have to then, okay, now forget all that, everybody come together and memorize all the facts we got to memorize because taking season is coming up.
Right.
We got to figure out how to support that kind of energy.
All right. It sounds like it's joy for the kids and the teachers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another one of the big challenges, I mean, we've just got great teachers, but we've all been through difficult budget times this last decade, really, and Virginia is still facing headwinds because we're so dependent on the defense industry, and Governor McAuliffe is working hard every day, as he says, to create the new Virginia economy and try to help us expand into new markets. But because of those headwinds, we've been hard on education budgets at the state and the local level. Very, very happy that the governor worked hard to protect K-12 education from this most recent round of budget cuts, and that because the economy is taking a little bit of an upswing recently, that there was additional money put on the table, that the governor and the General Assembly together have decided to give teachers pay raises along with state employees, and we're doing what we can to help on that side too. Teachers really mostly aren't in it for the money, but everybody has families and needs to be able to support their own families.
Okay. Well, and how do you attract and retain teachers in this type of climate?
Yeah, and that is absolutely one of the real challenges, and it is a challenge all across the Commonwealth. We don't have enough teachers. We do import teachers. We don't grow enough of our own here in Virginia, right. And it's a challenging thing when you hear a teacher out in Chesterfield. I read in the news recently of a teacher in Chesterfield, an 18-year teaching veteran, board certified, which means that he's met the highest national standards, and that gives you a little bump in your pay. Mm-hmm. And I think he was a science teacher, so it's one of our hard-to-fill areas. The Chesterfield School Board was talking about teacher raises, as everybody is in their localities, and doing what they can. But he said even with the raise that was being proposed, his children are eligible for free and reduced lunch. An 18-year teaching veteran.
Wow.
you know, what's wrong with this picture? And the public supports public education and supports being willing to pay for it. But it's just, we're just in some tough times, and we're having to dig out from some of the, still digging out from some of the challenges left over from the recession.
Right. And you're mentioning a little bit about the science, but STEM is a really important topic for you and for the governor.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about what's going on with
And
STEM.
important because it's where the jobs are, and there is a little bit of a disconnect between what kids are aspiring to and what the job market is offering. And I think some of it is just an information gap, that students don't know what's out there. You know, if you tell kids, do you want to be an engineer? They'll go, well, you know, I don't even know what engineering is. But this program, for instance, the one I mentioned in Charlottesville, I visited with another young lady from a Charlottesville inner city school, young African-American 8th grader, who had gotten involved through a summer camp. I said, well, when you went to the camp, were you know you were interested in this kind of stuff? Never heard of it. My principal just said, go to this camp. And by the time I met her a year later, she's on her way to be a UVA engineer. Had no question in her mind at all, and no question in my mind either. I mean, she's showing me this solenoid device she made, and I don't even know what it was, but the piston goes back and forth, and the wheel goes around, and it works. Right. And if you tell somebody, do you like to make things? Oh yeah, I like to make things. Do you like to work with your brain and your hands? Oh yeah, I like to do that. Oh well, that's what engineers do. Then we can promote engineering by by helping overcome the information gap.
All right. Well, I think it's exciting to hear even young women are being steered more in this direction to grasp avenues in that area.
I met. We had the State Council of Higher Education does an annual event every year of outstanding faculty awards in the higher education system, and there was a professor, I think, yes, Old Dominion University physics professor, and her physics program at ODU is now 1/3 women. How about that? But that's unusual. That's really overcoming. Right. So we have to open up people's minds to the opportunities.
Right.
And some of it is just really, one thing we're working really hard on in conjunction with my colleague in Commerce and Trade, Maurice Jones, and all our workforce programs is, again, helping align the education system with what the needs of the job market are. Some of the challenges, some of the things the job market needs these days are things that nobody heard of 20 years ago. You know, cybersecurity is this huge new field where we can't get enough people into it. Well, if kids do what their parents do or what their parents' friends do, nobody's going to go into cybersecurity because nobody's parents did cybersecurity. Right. It didn't exist. So we have to figure out how to help our education system be more nimble, our workforce programs be more nimble, and also we have to really just market opportunities to our students. And I think that's one of the real, as we free our schools up some from some of the constraints we've put them under, one of the expectations we should have of them, one of the roles of K-12 education is to make young people aware of opportunities career-wise. Right. The kids don't need to know when they're a 10th or an 11th grader what they're going to do for a living, but they need to have some exposure to options.
All right. And let's talk about the importance of that start, that early pre-K.
Yeah.
I know it's a really important issue for you. I want to spend some time chatting about that.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Yes, especially as we look to deal with some of these achievement gap issues that we discussed earlier, that the research all shows that so much is happening in the brains of our little young people, and that if we can start early with high quality education programs in the earliest years, we can really give those kids a head start. If we fail to do that, what we see is kids starting kindergarten with, even starting kindergarten with huge achievement gaps. That there's research that shows that the typical 5-year-old coming into kindergarten from an impoverished background, this is an amazing fact, Ray, has literally heard, it's something like 30 million fewer spoken words in their life than kids from wealthier backgrounds. And so some of that we can try to help in all kinds of ways, but one of the best ways to do that is high quality pre-K really does help address. And so we've got strong Head Start programs here in Virginia, strong VPI, Virginia Preschool Initiative, but they don't get to everybody who needs them, and we're working hard to expand them.
All right.
We were very, very lucky, very blessed to bring all our education and early childhood communities together to support a very strong application to the federal government for a preschool development grant. And we were awarded a $17.5 million grant this fall that's really going to help us figure out how to expand our capacity. That's going to help. We're working with the General Assembly, hoping the General Assembly in future years can help us figure out ways to expand pre-K as well.
All right. Talk a little bit about what the governor's education legislative agenda has looked like this year.
Well, so we talked about the SOL bill about additional accreditation. There's also been we also proposed some legislation around something the teachers call expedited retakes that allows somebody who comes close to passing a test but doesn't quite a chance to get a second bite at the apple. And that legislation flew through the General Assembly as well. We had some things in the budget that will expand our capacity at the Department of Education to work with our challenge schools, to do training programs for principals who are working in challenging environments. We had a nutrition program that the First Lady championed and did a really lovely job on that will help promote school breakfast programs. The really understanding the key of what we need to do in these challenge schools is it's not just what's in the classroom. We have to get the curriculum material right. We have to get the right teachers, attract and retain great teachers, and we have to do the wraparound community piece. We have to figure out how to engage parents. We have to figure out how to make sure kids are coming to school ready to learn, that they're not hungry or missing glasses or health care that they need. And then to do all of those three, we need leadership. And school principals, superintendents, school boards, all of those issues are key. And so really we worked in various legislative and budgetary ways on all of those pieces.
Right. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yes, it is. It is a very complex system. It is really the biggest part of the state budget, the biggest part of most localities' budgets. And it's one of the most important things that government does for our families.
Yeah. I know that you were part of a group that the governor had selected to work on the campus violence issues that have gone on. And while I think what happened in UVA, facts have changed, but it's an opportunity. And I think the administration and you all are looking at as an opportunity to help make some corrections. Why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on there?
Yes, thank you. Right. The governor actually appointed a sexual violence task force back in August before all the news of this fall, and it's a very good group. Includes law enforcement folks. The Attorney General is leading it. Law enforcement, higher education folks, victims advocates, public safety folks, all across the board, all coming together to say what can we do to make sure our campuses are as safe as they possibly can be. You know, the good news is they really are relatively safe despite all the recent news. The studies show that you're actually safer. A young woman in the age of 18 to 24 is safer on campus than not on campus for all kinds of reasons. And yet we do have issues. We are convinced we do have issues on our campuses that need to be addressed and that we can do better on. And so the governor brought all these folks together starting in August, and then we had all these tumultuous challenges this fall. The incident where the young lady, Hannah Graham, tragically lost her life in just a really, really sad situation. And everything else, we have incidents that come to our attention all across the Commonwealth have led us to believe that we can and must do better.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a unique opportunity for you all to do that. So
yes,
thank you for that work there.
And there are lots of folks working on it. I mean, even on the campuses, and students on the campuses are working on it. You know, what can we do to make sure that I'm loving the fact that young people are recognizing we've got to do better on alcohol.
Right.
And, you know, alcohol's a hard thing. You can't tell kids, you know, kids have been told not to drink over and over again, and saying that over again maybe isn't going to make a difference. But figuring out how to help everybody drink responsibly if they're going to drink, and that affects both potential perpetrators and potential victims.
Right.
And their friends, and everybody's able to take care of each other.
Exactly.
So watching students come forward and say, we can exercise better leadership here and taking care of each other.
Right.
And not just on alcohol, in all kinds of ways.
Right.
I'm encouraged
All right. I think you were saying you had even heard some presidents saying they were encouraged to see how the students have embraced this change.
Yeah, and so the challenges this fall have been very painful, but I think they have helped bring the wider community together.
All right. Now, museums and libraries fall under your purview as well.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about some of the fun
that's
things there.
that's just plain fun. The Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, the Virginia Commission on the Arts, the Frontier Culture Museum, the Library of Virginia, the Gunston Hall is the home of George Mason in the Northern Neck, the Science Museum. I'm very blessed to have all of them under my, Jamestown Yorktown Foundation. I'm very blessed to have all of them under my purview. They don't need a whole lot of help from me. I just get to go to the fun things, and really, we're blessed in Virginia to have such great cultural institutions doing good work.
Great.
And as with others in state government, doing more with less every day, and making tough decisions about how to do more with less. We've got great leaders in all of those institutions. It's an honor to get to work with them.
Anything fun going on that you, off the top of your head, that you know about?
Well, the Virginia Museum's next big exhibit coming up is this flowers exhibit. So they're doing Impressionists and flowers, so it's all across all kinds of different Impressionists. It's going to be quite fun starting in mid-March. Jamestown Yorktown's opening a whole new visitor center. Lots of good stuff going on everywhere.
Right. We were talking a little bit earlier about the kids on the free and reduced school lunch programs, and I know you were very supportive of some of the initiatives of Connect to Compete or Internet Essentials, some of the telecommunications companies advocating and offering opportunities for kids to get on broadband opportunities.
Yes, it's education is, and actually I think in ways K-12 education is farther along in figuring out how to incorporate technology in the classroom than some other, into their work than some other sectors, and yet it's very challenging because we do have, we all want to use technology to the maximum to further education, but we've got to do it in an equitable way. Right. And so you've got to have tech equity, and we have some schools that are saying, well, let's do BYO device, bring your own device, rather than trying to supply every kid a laptop, and that's fine if you figure out how to accommodate the child that doesn't have the device. Right. And if you don't, then you really do end up very seriously leaving people behind. Right. And we've been very grateful for partnerships with some of our cable providers here in Virginia who've helped do things to help provide more economical access to families, to low-income families, even to have internet access at home. We're working with this national nonprofit, the Education Superhighway, to figure out how we can help our localities more economically purchase broadband capacities for the schools.
That's fantastic.
Lots going on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Ray.
And thank you for watching this edition of Cable Reports. Mm-hmm.